Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I am very sorry it's been so long since my last video. It's been like nearly 2 months at this point. That's poor for me, I'm really sorry. Hopefully from this point on I should be uploading somewhat consistent videos, but I'm not going to make any promises in case I disappoint you lot again. Right, today's video. I want to talk about the Moto2 Championship because Moto3 Championship has now been decided, as has the MotoGP one, so the Moto2 Championship is the only one really that's interesting left. And this most recent race in Indonesia was a huge one for the Moto2 World Championship. If you didn't see it, Diogo Moreira won the race in brilliant fashion, and Manu Gonzalez finished in second, with Aaron Canet and Barry Bottas finishing 4th and 5th after quite poor qualifying performances. They did quite well. However, the big bombshell was that after the race, Manu Gonzalez got disqualified for having some non-homologated software on his bike. Whatever that means, he got disqualified, which has blown the championship wide open in Moto2. Gonzalez's lead at the top of the championship is now only 9 points ahead of Diogo Moreira. Aaron Canet now sits at 33 points behind, and Barry Bottas sits at 43 points behind. And with 4 races left, absolutely anything can happen. So in today's video, I'm going to take a look at the 4 remaining contenders for the Moto2 Championship and basically just consider what chance they actually have of winning the title. Let's get straight into it. We'll start with Barry Bottas, who currently sits 4th in the championship. Anyone below him I refuse to even consider. Barry Bottas, even to consider him in this fight is a bit of a stretch. He currently sits 43 points behind Gonzalez. With 100 points left on offer, it would take quite a big miracle for him to win the championship, but stranger things have happened. Barry Bottas has had such an impressive season. After 2 seasons of looking like he had potential but not really showing it on a consistent basis, this year he's jumped onto that Fantic Racing team and he has shown everybody that he is a truly class rider and one that could easily get into MotoGP one day. He currently sits 4th in the championship on 195 points. He's claimed 6 podiums so far this season, including 5 second places. He's been extremely unlucky not to get a win this season. But the thing that's impressed me the most has been his consistency. It's not been as strong in the second half of the season, but especially in the first half of the season, he was consistently fighting in and around the top 5. Like I said, his form since the summer break has dipped a little bit, and I think that's mostly due to a dip in qualifying performances. Barry Bottas was really strong in qualifying earlier on in the year. It's sort of taken a bit of a drop in recent races, and as a result, his very weak title challenge has sort of faded in recent races. But with Gonzalez's disqualification, he is now within a shout. 43 points. It is a big gap, but it is definitely doable. He had a very impressive race in Indonesia. After a very poor start, he managed to work his way through the field really well, finished 4th in that race. It was a very good ride from him. However, if he is going to win this championship, I think he needs to win at least 2 of the remaining 4 races, and probably finish 2nd in the other 2. At the very least, to be honest, he needs to finish this season as by far the best rider if he has to have any chance of winning this title. I tried to look at his previous performances at the remaining circuits, but it's quite hard to judge Barry Bottas on his performances because he's been on quite a shit bike for the past few years. However, last season he did get a very impressive 7th place finish in Phillip Island. I think for Barry Bottas, the fact that I'm even considering him for the title at the moment is a bit generous. I think his chances are very low, to be honest. It is still possible, but I just don't think he'll have enough to bring home the title. I do, however, think he'll get his first win of the season before the season closes, and he could be a very strong contender next year, but this year I don't think it's the year, but it's still been a fantastic year for him, and if he can get that first victory before the end of the year, it'll be a phenomenal season from him. Next up we have Aaron Canet. Now Aaron Canet is somebody who for a very long time on this channel I have backed to win the title. I said in my video when I talked about the race in Brno that I still backed him to win the title then, but since then, and even before that, his form has been woeful. Before the most recent round in Indonesia, he was on a form of 0 top 5 finishes in the past 7 races, which included 2 DNFs and a 15th spot in Motegi. That is nowhere near title winning form, and it was such a shame after such a solid consistent start of the year. He only had 1 win, which was in Qatar, which was a brilliant win by the way, but it was his consistency which really stood out to me and was the reason I was convinced he could win this title. But since the summer break, he has completely fallen off a cliff. He's for some reason completely forgotten how to qualify, which is really concerning. And up until Indonesia, I was truly convinced that his title chances were done. However, with Gonzalez's disqualification, he's been given a lifeline. 33 points with 4 rounds remaining is definitely catchable, and I do think he still has a shot at winning this title. However, if he is going to win this title, he needs to regain the form he had at the start of the year, and arguably have better form than what it was at the start of the year, because his current form is nowhere near good enough. He had a good race in Indonesia, which was nice, but it's important for him to back that up and have another class performance in Phillip Island and then in Malaysia. And speaking of those tracks, Aaron Canet, I think, has quite a favourable end to the season in terms of tracks he likes. He's had a good record at Phillip Island, he's finished second there for the past 2 years, and he got his first ever Moto3 podium there. And he probably should have won the race last year if he wasn't punted off the track by Firmin Aldeguer. And if he wins that race, I think he could have some serious momentum going into the past 3 races. Portimao is another track which Aaron Canet has gone strongly at. He got his first ever Moto2 victory there last season, and he's got 2 second places there in the past. He has some decent form at Valencia, he got a second place in 2023. We'll ignore his form in Malaysia though, he does not have a good record there. I do still think that overall his chances are fairly slim, but if he wins in Phillip Island, I will be strongly considering him for the title. Overall though, even if he does win that, I do think that 33 points might just be a bit too much of a gap for him to catch, and I think that his poor form in recent weeks has ultimately cost him. And it's a bit of a shame really, because I honestly thought at one point this year that this would be his year, but it just doesn't look like it's going to be, unless he can have a world-class end to the season. Yeah, overall, Aaron Canet, I do think he has a somewhat chance of winning the title, but it's going to be a big ask for him. He needs to be on top form, and he honestly needs a few mistakes from Moreira and Gonzalez really to win it. I still refuse to rule him out though, especially when we've still got Phillip Island to go, but if he doesn't win that race, I think that's his chances well and truly gone. Next up we have Diego Moreira, who, for me at least, has put up quite a surprising title challenge. I expected him to have a good season, but not to this level, and I didn't expect him to be challenging for the title this much. Especially when, after the halfway stage of the season, he was fairly off the title. However, in the second half of the season, he's been consistently slowly catching up to Gonzalez, and now he sits only 9 points behind Gonzalez. Diego Moreira has had a fantastic season. Apart from Germany, where he made a big mistake, he's barely made any mistakes this season. He's been nearly flawless, and that is shown in his form. He's got an insane amount of top 5 finishes, and that's been the most impressive thing really. Last season he showed flashes of brilliance, but he was inconsistent. This season he's been fighting in the top 5 in almost every single race. He has 3 victories to his name, he has 7 podiums, he has had such an impressive season, and there's a reason why he's going to MotoGP, apparently. In addition to that, Diego Moreira has scored 5 pole positions this year, which I think is really impressive. He turns up when it matters really. There's been quite a few weekends. Indonesia's a perfect example where he just looks a bit nowhere all weekend through practice, but then in qualifying he turns up, and then in the race he turns up, and that's the most important bit really. And especially in the second half of the season, he's been amazing at just picking up consistent, solid results, a few wins here and there, and he is now well within a really good shot of the title. And as of right now, I would honestly say that he could be the favourite over Gonzalez. If you look at the current form, in 5 of the last 6 races, Moreira has finished ahead of Gonzalez. And when the gap is only 9 points between them, I think there's a very good chance that Moreira overtakes Gonzalez by the end of the year. Because Moreira definitely has momentum on his side, and he also has the fact that he's the one that's going to MotoGP. Gonzalez has unfortunately missed out, so I feel like Moreira's going to have that extra bit of motivation of wanting to go into MotoGP as a champion. He will want to prove to people that he deserves to be in MotoGP, and, you know, it feels fitting that the one that goes to MotoGP should be the champion in my opinion. That being said, Moreira is still very young and quite inexperienced. It's only his 2nd year in Moto2, and a bit like Bottas really, it's quite hard to read into his previous form at the remaining tracks. He has before got a podium at Portimao in 2023, and he also got solid top 5 results at Malaysia and Phillip Island last year. So in theory he has solid form going into the remaining races. You know, he in theory likes the tracks we're going to. And overall I think that Moreira has a very good shot at the title. Now that this disqualification for Gonzalez has come up, I think he is maybe the favourite, to be honest. I was strongly considering backing him for the title even before Gonzalez got this disqualification in Indonesia, but now that the gap's only 9 points, I honestly think Moreira could be the favourite going into the last 4 rounds. But of course we now need to talk about the current championship leader, Manuel Gonzalez. He currently sits on 238 points and he's been leading the championship for pretty much the entire season. And he has been the fastest rider all season. He's got the most podiums with 9, he's got the most wins with 4, he's got the most pole positions with 7. He has been the fastest rider on the grid all season and he should have his championship wrapped up by now. However, a combination of mistakes and bad luck have cost him, and as a result I think his lead on the championship is in real danger and there's a big chance he loses this championship, to be honest. Gonzalez started the season in absolutely phenomenal form. However, since the summer break his form has sort of dipped a little bit. He's not won since Mugello, he's only scored 3 podiums since that win in Mugello. Meanwhile Moreira has scored 5 podiums. That being said, that isn't entirely Gonzalez's fault. Of course, he had a second place in Indonesia ripped away from him. That was just rotten luck. And also his bike just expired on him in Austria when he could have potentially got a good result there. That is also just terrible luck. However, we can't act like he's not made quite a few mistakes this season. He absolutely cleaned out Celestino Vietti in Motegi, which got him a penalty and probably cost him a few points. He completely wiped himself and Barry Bottas out at Silverstone. He crashed out of quali in Aragon, which put him on the back foot. He's made quite a few mistakes this season. And the other big mistake this season, or not really a mistake, but a gamble that didn't pay off, was in USA. When it rained, Gonzalez took the risk, as did Moreira to be fair. Gonzalez took the risk of going onto dry tyres hoping the track would dry. Ultimately it didn't pay off and Gonzalez was miles off. However, the reason he did that is because Gonzalez is not a good wet weather rider, and yes, I know he got his first victory in the wet. However, this season has shown that he is not a fast wet weather rider. From what I remember, he really struggled when it rained in Germany, and even in the USA in the wet practices, he was really struggling. And I think that could be a big factor in the remaining 4 rounds, because we go to Phillip Island, Malaysia, and then Portimao and Valencia all in November. There's a good chance there's going to be a rain in at least one of those races, or it's going to be wet weekends on at least one of those races. Probably more, to be honest, because some of those tracks have history of it raining a lot, and I think that could seriously harm Gonzalez's chances of winning the title. Because compared to Cadet and Moreira, and even Bottas I think really, Gonzalez is weaker than them all in the wet weather in my opinion, so I think Gonzalez, he's going to have to pray that there is 0 rain for the remaining 4 rounds, but I would be amazed if that is the case. That being said, he does have a really good record at the remaining tracks. He got a podium last season at Portimao, he's got on other top 5 finishes at Portimao, Phillip Island and Malaysia, and he's got on the top 6 finish in Valencia, all while on quite a shit bike on the, what was it, the VR46 Mastercab. He wasn't on a very good bike and he got really good results on it. So Gonzalez is good at the remaining tracks. And there is a reason he's leading the championship, and even when he hasn't won in races, like in Indonesia, he was the fastest rider in the practice. Moreira just turned up when it mattered, and I do think that will be the case throughout the remaining 4 races. Gonzalez will look like the faster one in the races, in the practicing. It's whether he can turn up in the races and qualifying, and whether he can avoid making any more mistakes. I think if Gonzalez makes any more mistake, that could be him kissing goodbye to his championship. He needs to be squeaky clean for the rest of the season, otherwise I think he could lose out on this championship. I do still think with him, of course, leading the championship and just being the fastest rider, he's still got a very solid shot at the championship, but I do think that he needs to be on top form, and I think he needs to be on better form than he's currently on. I think his early season form is what got him in this position, and his current form versus what Moreira's current form is in, I'm not sure it's going to be enough. He needs to rediscover that early season form if he does want to win the title. So after all of that, it's time for me to decide who I think is going to win the Moto2 championship. And ultimately, while I do think that Bottas and Canet do still have a chance, I think it's between Gonzalez and Moreira, to be honest. It would take a miracle for either Canet or Bottas to win the championship. The points gap for those two I think is just a bit too big, and considering they're not in the greatest form, I think it's just going to be a bit too much for them. Now, between Gonzalez and Moreira, it's so close between these two, it's pretty much the flip of a coin. However, I do think that Moreira has the advantage in Gonzalez in quite a lot, to be honest. He has him over momentum, in wet weather ability, and just form in general over the past couple of months really. Gonzalez has the advantage of just being a faster rider in general this season, I think, and he has a better bike. However, I do think that momentum is one hell of a drug, and I think that that is going to carry Diogo Moreira to the Moto2 championship. I think that Moreira is going to steal the championship away from Gonzalez, right at the end of the season and win the Moto2 championship, which will be heartbreaking for Gonzalez after leading it for so long. But, you know, these things happen in motorsport. He has made a few mistakes this season, and, you know, he has had some bad luck as well, but I just think it's destined for Moreira to win it late on. And I think that it'll be fitting that the one rider going up to MotoGP will be the champion. So I think Diogo Moreira is going to win the Moto2 championship. But now I want to know what you guys think, so let me know in the comments. Who do you think will win the Moto2 championship? Will it be Gonzalez, Moreira, or somebody else? Let me know in the comments. And while you're there, make sure to leave a like on the video if you did enjoy, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this. Like I said, I promise I'll get my upload schedule somewhat together. Hopefully from this point on, I should be uploading at least semi-consistently. So if you want to support the channel, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button. And yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys very soon. Bye bye. Ultimately though, I think there's just too many factors that go against Aaron Canet for me to seriously say here, no. Ultimately though, I think there's just too many... Oh, for fuck's sake.